This is a co-production of WTVI PBS Charlotte and Charlotte Radiology. Tonight on a special Carolina Impact, we discuss the dreaded C word, cancer.
I get a phone call that says that my mammogram was abnormal and that I needed to have another one done.
Lung cancer accounts for 1 in 3 cancer deaths. Breast cancer affects 1 in 8 women. And an average man's lifetime risk of getting liver cancer is about 1 in 81. The best way to win the war on cancer is early detection.
I dodged a bullet because I got it early.
Explore how cutting-edge procedures and advances in medical technology are saving lives.
We're able to inject those particles directly into the tumor bed and irradiate the tumor from inside out.
Learn about the options for cancer care and critical tips to help you survive tonight on a special Carolina Impact, fighting back when cancer attacks.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for this special Medical Carolina Impact. I'm Amy Burkett. An aunt, a mother, a grandmother, or perhaps a coworker. Most of us know someone who has been diagnosed with breast cancer. But did you know about 1 in 8 women in the U.S. will develop invasive breast cancer during her lifetime? Early detection holds the key to beating breast cancer. Monthly self-breast exams and a yearly mammogram may be the very best defense a woman has. You're about to meet a Charlotte woman who not only realized the importance of mammograms, she even worked to turn them into something a little more enjoyable and social. Carolina Impact's Bea Thompson explains.
Yeah, like, why they looking at the ring?
She's a mom, a native Charlottean, and a woman who cares about her health, in particular, breast health.
Well, one of my friends had said that around 38 you can start, so you didn't have to wait to 40. So I went with 39 and I went on to start it.
Yet even when we start with the best intentions, Angela went for that first mammogram. She even went for the second. But when it came time for the 3rd annual, well, life sort of got in the way.
Timing, just caught up in the day-to-day, the hustle and bustle, realizing like, oh, I ain't had my mammogram yet. Didn't feel anything, so I just wait till the next annual time that I normally go for it.
But Angela decided she could do something to get other women to go for the stand and deliver exam that we call a mammogram by having a mammogram party.
I'm always this event planner, doing type things, doing somebody's party, baby shower, whatever. So I said, okay, well, got the email, so let's do this mammogram party.
So with a little chip and dip, some fruit, cheese, and conversation with coworkers, Angela got that party going, and the breast exam conversation was started. Statistics say 1 in 8 women will develop breast cancer, but at the mammogram party for others, she never expected to be the one doctors would be calling back.
I get a phone call that says that my mammogram was abnormal and that I needed to have another one done. And so then they scheduled that one, and then I went in. And at that time, when you have that one, because they want your results right away, they'll have a specialist. So I had a specialist, someone there once it was done for them to tell me the results. And so I talked to the specialist afterwards.
So most women who get that phone call from us, although it's a scary phone call, at the end of that next visit, we'll find that they don't have anything concerning. We do run into, those cases while we're reading them, we know it's going to be a cancer. It's, a very obvious abnormality on that screening mammogram. So we prioritize those patients to get called back more immediately, but as I'm looking at it, of course, I say, oh, that's bad news.
For Angela, it's a history in her family that made awareness all the more important.
We have a large family, and my mom's side of the family, over half of them have had cancer. We've lost a couple of my uncles to cancer, and I lost my grandparents to some form of cancer. So abnormal meant to me, in your breast, I could possibly have breast cancer.
Try having all of this happen as the holidays begin, and 2 days before your own birthday.
We had the mammogram party, I think it was like November the 14th of last year. Everything went kind of fast for me. I went back again for a couple weeks. They did the qualifications on the second one. After that, they had me assigned for my biopsy probably by the end of November, 1st of December, because I got my diagnosis call on the 17th of December. So between the 14th of November and the 17th of December, I had went through my first mammogram, my second mammogram, my biopsy, and my diagnosis.
The good news with breast cancer is it's a very treatable disease, especially when caught at an early stage. It is the most common cancer that women can develop, but it is not the cancer that is most lethal to women. Then the bad news is it is common, and so a lot of women will have to undergo treatment for this, and there's always the potential that a cancer will be caught either at a later stage or it's a more aggressive cancer. So even if it is caught early, it may already have started to spread.
For Angela, after that biopsy confirmation, the rounds of radiation began. She had 33 treatments and ended up with a golf ball-sized mass removed from her breast. Yet for this woman, the major concern was for her family, her husband, her 2 sons, the eldest ready for college, but not quite ready for mama's diagnosis.
I kind of look to my mama for everything. So when she can't really do what she always do, it kind of throw the whole household off because we're not used to that. We're used to her always moving, doing stuff. When I was thinking about it, if my mom wasn't here, I was thinking about all the roles I had to step up, how I had to be there for my little brother.
One way he shows his support, pink sneakers on a 6-foot-tall son touting the story of breast cancer survivors. And while life has changed, it still moves forward for Angela and her family with support from everyone. And the doctors point out, refusal to acknowledge does not make an ailment go away.
Early detection for me was great because, I mean, I have one of those breast cancers where it does rapid.
Do what you need to do to protect yourself, and remember to get your screening each year. Do it with mammogram parties, buddy checkups, calls when it's time for annual physicals. But the bottom line of all this, do it so that you will be here for your family and you'll be here for yourself. For Carolina Impact, I'm Beatrice Thompson reporting.
Thanks so much, Bea. Joining me now is Dr. Laura Daniil with Charlotte Radiology. Dr. Daniil, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we saw in that story, she was in her 40s, and she had been so diligent, and all it took was just skipping 1 year when we can miss something that's so important. Talk to us about why it's important not to skip that year.
I think as her case highlights, we do see cancers develop within a year, and in her case within 2 years. So knowing that something could crop up and you've missed a full year when that could have been detected, it's hard to say how that's going to impact, you know, your treatment and your ultimate outcome.
And she, like so many of us, it happens, it seems to be even more frequent when we're in our 40s. She was in her 40s, we're both in our 40s. This is the time when we're often so busy taking care of everyone else, but we cannot not take care of ourselves.
Right. It's very easy to put yourself last on your priority list. But I think, as what happened with Angela, you have to take care of yourself first in order to be there to take care of everybody else and keep up with your busy life.
You know, it was just a few years ago that there was a lot of controversy about what the right age was to start getting mammograms. It's died down a little bit, but let's just reaffirm to people, when should we start getting our mammograms?
We still recommend starting at age 40, which has been the recommendation for several years. There's definitely been some confusion with other studies that have come out. I think a lot of that data has been reanalyzed and felt not to really be that strong, and not enough to change our recommendations.
So getting started, because that's the first step to getting cured if you have
Right.
any kind of problem. Let's talk a little bit also, a radiologist. A lot of people understand their medical doctor to go and visit, but help people understand what is that role and what is a radiologist actually, because it's a little confusing.
It is. I think a lot of people never meet their radiologist. Women have that unique opportunity with mammography especially. We're imaging specialists. So we have spent extra years training specifically in all the different fields of imaging. Our group also, all of our radiologists have specialized in women's imaging and breast imaging in particular.
So you know specifically what to look for.
Absolutely.
I remember I had a little scare this year as well. And as a busy working mom who relocated from another state, I hadn't got my mammogram right on time, took advantage of the mobile mammography that you folks had, but then I got that phone call that I had to come in for another visit and another check. I was nervous about it, but it was so great that you were right there to point it out. When they tried to show me on the screen, I didn't know what I was looking at. I mean, is this good or is this bad? And you're like, nope, no problem. Everything's perfect with it. And that's what we all want to hear. And you're probably able to do that so many times and put everyone at ease because you know what you're looking for. I was clueless.
Yeah, that's probably the one benefit to the diagnostic mammogram. When you get that scary phone call, you come back in and we do a diagnostic mammogram. So additional images, maybe ultrasound. But at that visit, you will meet the radiologist who will come into the room, talk to you about why you were called back, what additional findings were detected at that visit, and what the results are, and what needs to happen next. So I think just that person-to-person interaction, it goes a long way for me to get to meet the woman behind the images and get those few minutes to spend the time with her in the room, talk to her. Mostly I am kind of allaying their fears, giving them good news that there is nothing wrong, and educating them a little bit on our recommendations for mammography, why we do it, why it's important.
Dr. Laura Daniel from Charlotte Radiology, we're so grateful for your information, so grateful for your expertise.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about lung cancer now. Did you know lung cancer accounts for 1 out of every 3 cancer deaths? Environmental factors like exposure to radon gas and asbestos can increase your risk, but other things like smoking and exposure to secondhand smoke are the greatest risk factors. Carolina Impact's Jeff Rivenbark introduces us to a man who's passionate about using technology to diagnose and save lives.
From sketching landscapes to portraits, this artist loves using pastels.
Actually, I started out with my grandmother, who was a ceramist. She taught me about colors.
Dr. Michael Kelly uses a variety of pastels to create diverse moods, which make his still lifes look real. In his home, you'll probably find him in his art studio.
Clearly, I'd like to go in there every evening. If I'm working on a project, I will.
His wife Loretta is both his greatest fan and harshest critic.
I will bring her in and I'll say, Loretta, what do you think? And she'll say, no, the wheels aren't quite right, or the eyes aren't quite, or that doesn't look like him.
Dr. Kelly enjoys playing fetch with his black lab Sam, but his passion is at work, where he is an interventional radiologist.
2.7 centimeters. The bony thorax is unremarkable.
He spends most of his time at work in a dimly lit room, carefully analyzing hundreds of computer tomography or CT scans that have been taken of his patient's lungs.
I think we're a bit of detectives in medicine, and particularly in radiology. That's the Sherlock Holmes part of what we do.
These statistics from the Lung Cancer Alliance may surprise you. 60% of all lung cancer patients have never smoked, or were former smokers who quit decades ago. Lung cancer accounts for 1 in 3 cancer deaths. It's the second most diagnosed cancer in men and women.
I've tried to get patients to stop. It's really hard. It's a very serious addiction. Some have said it's more addictive than some of the really hard drugs like cocaine.
If you smoked a pack of cigarettes per day for 30 years, and you're between 55 and 74 years old, you're considered at high risk for developing lung cancer. But just because you have a CT scan and receive an all-clear report, it doesn't mean you're out of the woods for good.
That group still needs to be screened every year, basically. They need to come back for the CT.
So what's involved in a CT lung cancer screening?
Have you ever had a CT like this before?
Well, it's painless. A patient lays on their back
We're getting ready to start your scan.
while a computer takes data from several X-ray images inside their body and converts them into pictures on a monitor. A CT scan is like looking at a slice of bread within the whole loaf. Once a CT scan is performed, the results are sent to a reading room like this, where the results are analyzed by a physician like Dr. Kelly to determine if cancer is present. The National Cancer Institute conducted a study of 53,000 smokers and ex-smokers. They found that using the CT scan for screening of lung cancer instead of the more traditional chest X-ray lowered the number of cancer deaths by 20% over a 5-year period. An advanced CT scan is capable of detecting very small nodules present in a patient's lungs, but these nodules would be nearly impossible to spot on a standard chest X-ray. But a positive screening doesn't necessarily mean you have cancer. Not all nodules are cancerous. For those that are, early detection brings great outcomes.
If we can get this early, you can survive. If we don't, if we let it wait 5 years, by the time we find it, it may be already out of the box. And that's the problem with lung cancer. We don't want you to go there.
Kelly knows all too well the consequences of lung cancer. A few years ago, his father died from it spreading throughout his body.
I got a phone call from the radiologist who had seen him in California. He just said, I have some bad news. And I said, I know what it's going to be. I appreciate your calling. And he said, you know, he has metastasis in the brain.
If CT scans had been more widely offered years ago, Kelly says physicians may have been able to spot his dad's cancer much earlier, and his treatments may have been more successful.
Radiology is really in the center of a lot of medicine, and if you can kind of explain to them how it fits in and how they can use that tool and communicate back to their patients. You know, it's trite, but a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Well, that's spectacular.
The pictures Dr. Kelly creates are filled with vivid detail and remind him of the hope advances in technology and an early diagnosis offers his patients. For Carolina Impact, I'm Jeff Rivenbark reporting.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Joining me now is Dr. Edward Kim, Chair of Solid Tumor Oncology at Levine Cancer Institute. Dr. Kim, thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Help us understand a little bit more what those CT scans offer that X-rays didn't.
You know, we've studied for decades, literally 3-4 decades, of trying to figure out how to screen high-risk patients. And really, they're not patients, they're people who have risk factors like smoking, like age. We've tried chest X-ray studies, we've tried sputum cytology, where people will actually spit and we'll try to measure cancer cells into them. Nothing has worked. And now, most recently, we have data in a large study in which doing chest X-rays versus CAT scans, these computed tomography scans, show benefit. In fact, close to a 20% mortality reduction. So that was really groundbreaking for the field. I think the awareness of patients to know that if you fit into that category, 30-pack year smoking, greater than 55 years old, you need to seek an opinion about getting a chest X-ray, and not that yearly chest X-ray, but focusing more on the doctors getting a CT scan, which we're trying to see if we can get covered. That's been a separate issue.
However, can you put a price tag on your life? I mean, that's one of those things that it's not always easy for folks, but I'd save my milk money for that one.
Yeah, we just want it to be in the same area of colonoscopies, the same area of mammography, and the same thing. The CAT scan should be the symbol of what we use for screening for high-risk people.
Because you can catch it many years sooner than you would have caught it with an X-ray. Is that sort of the bottom line?
Yeah, the resolution is much better, the detail is much better. You can't catch things that are less than the size of your pinky on a chest X-ray. In fact, it was probably more like 3 fingers together that you can get on a chest X-ray, and you can get something the size of a pinky on a CT scan.
And that the first step toward cure is diagnosis.
You know, our biggest struggle in lung cancer, and someone who has spent their life trying to make things better for lung cancer patients, has been that diagnosis. The majority, 3/4 of our patients, are diagnosed in later stage disease. And that's why the treatment hasn't really advanced as much as we'd liked over the last several decades. But if we can flip the side and diagnose more people earlier, then we will have better outcomes.
And you're saying we even do have better treatment options today. Once you have that diagnosis, it's not a death sentence because treatment has come so far in the last few years.
Even lung cancer experts have a hard time keeping up with all of the advances that have occurred for our patients. The first thing is that we're defining subsets of patients whose tumors have unique genes associated with them. And these genes are now paired with drugs that are pills. No intravenous chemotherapy in these patients, and we're seeing 80% shrinkage rates of their tumors. We're seeing patients alive almost 5 to 10 years if they fit in these subsets and have a good outcome. The side effects, you don't lose your hair, you don't have any of these aspects. It's much better tolerated. So, and there are numerous ones of these. Some you'll hear about are EGFR, ALK.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time. LMNOP. Yes. Dr. Edward Kim from the Levine Cancer Institute, we appreciate all this great information and all the wonderful research that's happening to help people enjoy better lives.
Thank you.
Many people spend the bulk of their lives working like crazy so they have what they need to enjoy their golden years. The man in our next story says his plans for retirement were put on hold 5 years ago following his cancer diagnosis. As Carolina Impact's Danielle Kozer reports, a relatively new form of treatment called Surspheres microspheres was the weapon needed to battle his cancer and get him back to enjoying life.
Meet Pat McFadden. Pat retired in 2010, but he prides himself on staying busy.
Saturday morning, I'm either fishing, hunting, or working around the house.
These days, you can find Pat at the lake fighting for the biggest catch. It's almost hard to believe just 5 years ago he was fighting a much bigger battle.
This was a man who had been unfortunately diagnosed with metastatic cancer into his liver.
They call me a success story. And I feel like I dodged a bullet. I dodged a bullet because I got it early.
You can also call Pat the poster child for early detection. He asked the doctor to check him for cancer after he started having abdominal pain and diarrhea.
I just wanted to get checked out to make sure that I didn't have it.
These symptoms were a red flag. Pat's brother had experienced similar problems just before he was diagnosed with carcinoid cancer just 2 years earlier.
He's my hero. He's the one that told me what to look for. And I truly believe that he was part of my recovery for having this carcinoid cancer. Golden Gate Bridge.
But for Pat and his wife Shirley, the diagnosis was a bit of a deja vu. You see, the couple shares more than their love for travel. Both of them have beat cancer.
My wife, 20 years earlier, went through breast cancer. Okay, so we've already went through that part of it at one time. So it was kind of like going through the same thing again, telling our children.
I was mad and I was scared. I didn't want him to have to go through treatments. But once we found Dr. Boyd and Dr. Wang, I was much relieved.
Full of relief, Pat and Shirley chose to respond to the positive test results with a positive attitude. Then it was time to tell their family.
I laid it out to them in a positive way that I was going to beat this thing.
They could be positive because they knew that having the big C wasn't the end, which I think is very important for someone who's going through cancer.
Also important, a doctor you're comfortable with. And that's what Pat found in Dr. Eric Wang.
His quality of life was not good and had grown in size, and his treatment options were limited. He was not a surgical candidate.
That's because the carcinoid cancer had spread to Pat's liver. So instead of going under the knife, he was treated with direct radiation using a relatively new form of treatment called Surspheres.
We're able to inject radioactive particles or something called chemoembolization, where we're injecting poison or cancer drugs directly to the tumor bed.
Surspheres are so tiny they're smaller in width than a strand of hair. But they pack a powerful punch.
They're meant to kill off cancer cells, but if they are in the wrong location, they can also cause complications.
During the procedure, precision is key. The doctors at Charlotte Radiology use a lifetime x-ray to make sure the microbeads go directly into the tumor. Once they're in place, they radiate the tumor from the inside out. Pat says the procedure didn't really hurt. It's actually done as outpatient surgery. The only side effects he had were hot flashes and some nausea.
It was amazing how well I felt. I was in the hospital in the morning and was released that evening.
Once Dr. Wang put the microspheres in place, they stayed in Pat's body for about 6 weeks. Surspheres exit the body slowly, mainly through the patient's urine. After the Surspheres radiation, Pat did 3 rounds of chemo, each about a month apart, followed by an ablation treatment.
We're actually able to go directly into the tumor bed and burn the tumor using thermal ablation or microwave energy to kill off cancer cells. It's patients such as Pat that we've made a difference in their life that I really think that inspires us to continue to do what we do.
Dr. Wang and the staff at Charlotte Radiology work not just to prolong their patient's life, but to improve it.
He was symptom-free. It was as if he never had the cancer.
Pat says he's healthier now than he was before he was diagnosed with cancer. Dr. Wang says there's just one more thing Pat needs to come through with.
I haven't gone fishing with Pat yet, so.
Pat knows the importance of follow-up visits and still sees Dr. Wang each year for a CT scan. Pat has hit a big milestone, 5 years cancer-free.
That's a good picture there. Shirley's made a commitment to me that she's going to get me past my 90th birthday, so I'm really looking forward to a lot more years of being healthy and being able to travel.
For Carolina Impact, I'm Danielle Koser reporting.
Thanks so much, Danielle. Well, joining me now is Dr. Eric Wang, who specializes in interventional radiology and vascular radiology with Charlotte Radiology. Dr. Wang, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks, good to be here.
You know, it really is an amazing procedure, but help us understand a little more about SurSpheres and the way that that works and how it's in your body, it's minimally invasive, and how does it get out of our body, or how does that work?
Well, it's a targeted treatment. We're using resin radioactive microspheres, very, very small, smaller than the tip of your hair, several million of them injected directly into the vascular supply of the tumor. So once it's in a safe space embedded within the tumor, then it irradiates the tumor from inside out over a course of 2 to 3 weeks, where that radiation does its work and kills off all the tumor cells in that immediate area. The particles are permanently embedded in there, but after a couple weeks, the radiation effect is no longer there.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit, this isn't traditional chemotherapy the way some people understand it, that he was treated with.
Right, exactly. So Pat initially underwent the resin microspheres radioactive treatment first. We're able to cytoreduce or decrease the amount of tumor within his liver, and after successful treatment with that, there was still some residual disease, so we actually went down the same pathway, his vascular supply, to inject chemoparticles, and this are essentially little particles embedded with the cancer treatment chemo drugs, where the chemo drugs slowly are released over the course of a couple weeks and kill off a number of cells that way.
So it's sort of a non-traditional approach, but so nice to be minimally invasive.
Minimally invasive, very direct treatment to the liver and to the cancer. Patients go home either the same day, such as Pat did, or they go home the next day. So we're talking about decreased pain, improvement in regards to patients' overall quality of life, as well as decreased recovery time.
And you often see a low infection rate, and just the outcomes work so very well for folks like the gentleman that we saw.
Yes, we've had some very good success stories at our institution, and part of that has to do with working very closely in collaboration with some strong medical oncologists, surgeons, as well as our radiation oncology team, to really kind of piecemeal a good treatment plan for our patient, because not one shoe fits all, right? So it's important that as we look at the overall patient and the disease process there, the anatomy there, that we're able to choose a good treatment plan for the patient that's customized, that we have the best results for.
And those best results, improved survival. I mean, that's what everybody wants. And this has been a disease that hasn't always had the best results.
Yes, and Pat and his wife are great. When we met close to 6 years ago with that diagnosis and the amount of liver disease he had, his overall 5-year prognosis was probably around 50–60%. And in our conversations, we felt that with our minimally invasive treatment options, that we were going to be able to improve that success rate to closer to 90% or maybe even 100%. And here we are right now. We're 5 years out. He's been in remission. He's cancer-free, and he's living a very good quality of life right now.
And I'm going to make sure you get that fishing invitation, okay?
Make sure that happens, yeah.
Absolutely. Dr. Eric Wang from Charlotte Radiology, thanks so much
for
all the work in helping us understand it better.
Great.
For more information on each of the procedures we mentioned during tonight's show, head to our Carolina Impact page at pbscharlotte.org. Knowledge is power, and we hope you've learned a lot this evening. Nobody wants to hear they have cancer, but dealing with it head on and not ignoring warning signs, as well as understanding your treatment options, often means the difference between life and death. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope to see you back here again next time on Carolina Impact. Good night.
This is a co-production of WTVI PBS Charlotte and Charlotte Radiology.